Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate pros. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics. In association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it.
Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy roundtable brought to you by First Star Therapy. I'm your host, James Gardner, and this is a platform for the pros, by the pros. Passionate pros, organic dialogue. Let's chat. Thanks for listening. Let's roll.
And away we go. Session 68. First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy round table brought to you by First Star Therapy and our primary sponsor, Mobility Tape, the only heat-activated kinesiology tape on the market. Really special guest, somebody we've had overlap with in the past in the professional space, in the baseball space, and have gone our separate ways. His son is now 6'6" and dunking basketballs. I now have a son, so some drastic changes since the last time we hung out together, but we did spend a lot of time together. Vince Horsman is our guest this evening. I'll get to his bio here in a minute. This podcast is always brought to you in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association and in partnership with Epic. That's EPOCH. You can check them out at live.epic on Instagram, and Benchmark Athletics. That's at Benchmark Athletics on Instagram. As mentioned, Vince Horsman is our guest tonight. We just wrapped up part 2 of 3 on Friday of Women in Sports. We have part 3 of 3 going this coming Friday noon again. But it's Sunday night. It's a great night to talk baseball. It's a great night to talk all things that Vince has been a part of. Vince Horsman is a former professional baseball pitcher, a Canadian who played in Major League Baseball for the Toronto Blue Jays, Oakland Athletics, and Minnesota Twins. Since pitching in the bigs, Vince logged 14 seasons as a pitching coach in the Toronto Blue Jays organizations at various levels, and has been a part of development, education, and enhancement of numerous big league pitchers, both past and current. Vince is currently semi-retired, doing private consults and coaching in Florida. Most recently, and of note locally, maybe here in Toronto, might be, Vince, your work with former Blue Jay Aaron Sanchez, who struggled a little bit with injury since winning 15 games in 2016, but struck out 4 in his opener in his first start of the season with the Giants this year. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit and where things have gone. But Vince Horsman, our guest, and he was elected to the Nova Scotia Sports Hall of Fame and is a proud Canadian, ketchup chips and all. Vince, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, what's up, James? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, man. It's been a few years and lots of things we can talk about. Brief catch up the other day and not the chips, but on where you're at and what you're doing, and obviously the long service time in baseball and still in it, doing some private and consults and pitching coach things. Let's start back as starting out as a Canadian, the interest in baseball, where it started for you, and then we'll work our way into sort of lessons and life learnings along the way.
Okay, sure. Let's get her done.
Yeah, man. So starting out, where'd you go? Left-handed pitcher. We've been through it, and if you looked at Vince's background, we've been through mullets, we've been through mustaches, we've been through it all, man. And where did it start for you, and how did that sort of evolve to the big leagues in terms of the playing career?
Oh, well, the big leagues was so far away from, my mind when I was a kid. It was just, baseball was during the summertime, basketball was during the wintertime. I played some hockey, organized hockey till I was about 12, but unfortunately my father could not afford to keep me and my older brother in it. So I graciously gave way, and my dad bought me a pair of basketball shoes every year for about $30. And thank God that he did that, because it was a way of me just staying in shape. And again, I played hockey, but I wasn't very good. I'm one of those few Canadians that wasn't very good on blades, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Sometimes you just got to accept when you're not very good at something, right? That's part of growing up. But over the years, just playing in the Maritimes, just continue to develop my skill set. Watch TV. That's pretty much how I learned. Had some good coaches along the way, but eventually just kind of separate yourself from other players. And I was fortunate enough to play in a tournament in Moncton in 1984, and a Blue Jay scout saw me, and then away we went. They offered me a contract before I finished high school, and then I went out to that lovely town in Alberta called Medicine Hat, and embarked on my professional career. And I was very fortunate to do something that I really loved for a very long time, especially being from where I am.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And something that not many people get to do, let alone many people from the Maritimes. And there's a few now through Major League Baseball and through the history of the game that have made it that far. But left-handed pitcher, you had some advantages being able to throw from that side. Into the organization out of high school, what were some of in reflecting back, or even if you can remember that far back, being in the professional space? We'll throw you under the bus. It's okay. You already called out what year it was.
If I can remember, okay. I know I have short-term memory loss, but I can remember long-term. Okay.
Fair enough. You just called out the year, so everybody knows. We'll just roll it out there. But going through high school, leaving high school and going to the professional ranks, what was that like for you? And what were some of those experiences? Was that tough? Was that an easy transition? Was it just sort of, you had to do it? How did that play out?
I would love to say it was an easy transition, but it really wasn't. Being surrounded by Americans and Latin players, and realizing how far behind I really was as far as my baseball acumen. And, there's just a point where I was struggling so bad, and, I'm 17 or 18 years old, and I was just like, this isn't like pitching back in Dartmouth. But I told myself I was going to get better. And I just really started to dedicate myself to the nuances of the game, the holding runners, the mechanics of it all, the shoulder exercises, whatever, the strength and conditioning part, even though back then our strength and conditioning was running and carrying a 12-ounce weight. And but just paying attention to that stuff, and just really in dedicating myself to the sport and trying to catch up as quick as I could.
Yeah, no, I think like those things along the way, noting that it's not easy, for some people who look from the outside, it just appears to be sort of a simple thing. And you note a couple things that we became very aware of in the minor leagues, the cultural component of things for Latin players coming over from Latin America, not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, these kinds of things that they're adjusting to. But as a Canadian going in and sort of recognizing I might be in over my head here, were there some mentors along the way that sort of helped you with that navigation? I'm sure a few, but do any stand out in your early years that kind of kept you going?
Well, for me, I kind of gravitated towards like the Latin kids, because even though, we're sitting in Canada, or we're sitting in parts of the United States, and I speak English, I felt like a foreigner. And, unfortunately, as well as, like I got some hazing from the American guys about where I was from, and that stuff that went along, and, kind of pisses you off a little bit. So, I use that as some fodder to really kind of push myself to not only do well, but be better than them. I don't think I had one particular mentor. I think what it was is just that, I was just going to treat people the way I wanted to be treated. And if I was around people that weren't going to treat me that way, I wasn't going to be around those type of people.
Yep.
So that's how I kind of just separated, the good guys that I wanted to be around versus the guys that I didn't want to spend any time with.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like life lessons and looking back, it served you well. You kept climbing through the ranks, you made it to the big leagues, you pitched for three separate organizations, and plenty of memories along the way. And then that carved, maybe not at the time, but carved in or built a career as a pitching coach and a long serving pitching coach that's had. Man, I can only imagine the amount of influence or the number of guys that you've had influence with and on and together through your coaching career. Was that ever part of your equation while you were playing? I'm going to move into pitching. I need to learn some things here. Or did that sort of happen naturally as the career wound down?
That happened as the career wound down. I mean, when I first started, back in 1984, I think the last thing that I ever thought I was going to do was be a pitching coach.
Mm-hmm.
Or spend a lifetime in the game. And fortunately for me, I was able to continue to stay in the game. Once I stopped playing, I was hired right away as an extra coach with Baltimore, and stayed there for 7 years, and then got hired by the Blue Jays and was there for 14 years. And it just seemed like I was at the right place at the right time. So, I feel very blessed and very fortunate to be from Nova Scotia, but to have spent a life in professional baseball, and meeting tons of great people along the way, such as yourself. The times that we spent in Lansing, Michigan, and doing our homework there, going over pitchers and injury reports and all that other good stuff. Those are memories that you take with you for your life. When you run into good people, I think we all have a responsibility to kind of impact people in some form or fashion. And for me, it's like the people that I come across, like how many people do you really keep in contact out of all the people that you come across in the game? There's very few. And, James, you're one of them. And Jason Dowse, I don't know if you remember Jason, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
But in case you got some short-term memory loss, I don't know. But, guys like that, you shoot a text out once in a while just to see how they're doing. You don't do that with a lot of people. So, yeah, very blessed, man. I've traveled a really good road. I've had a really good life.
Yeah, man, I appreciate those comments and your sentiments and all of those things. Jason was on this podcast. Him and I are really close friends. Obviously, some diversion from the game of baseball, and we've kind of navigated into some new waters. And he's been a mentor for me and a really close friend. And again, one of those guys. We knew each other in university, and then we lost touch, and then we found each other again in baseball, and then we've stayed in touch ever since. And same thing, I really appreciate that. And I made a post today on Instagram, as is the way of life these days, but community and relationships, right? Community and relationships is what it's all about. It's not about a big huge paycheck. It's not about am I doing anything other than maybe serving a purpose that's greater than just for me. It's for all those other pieces, and you touched on some of those things along the way for you in terms of developing bonds and developing an understanding, not planning to stay in the game, but ending up staying in the game. There's a certain draw about baseball. It's a chess match. It's the sporting version of, well, some people will call chess a sport, so we won't go there, but it's the on-field version of chess. There's so much going on behind the game. It's not fast-paced on the surface, but parts of it are certainly fast-paced in terms of thinking. So you didn't plan to stay in the game, and you ended up in it for life. And looking back at that, that's a pretty amazing thing. There's a lot of people out there that plan to stay in it for life, and then they have to transition because they can't. So an opportunity with Baltimore, an opportunity in Toronto, obviously in Toronto, and that's where we kind of cross paths again in Lansing, Michigan, and some amazing athletes down there. I think that you and I had lots of conversations on late nights, early mornings, maybe not even sleep in between, who knows, but a lot of time there. So let's just, before we get into sort of the pitching coach thing and all of that, as a professional career, did you have a lot of exposure to, now again, like the game has shifted, the dynamics have shifted to analytics, and you said already, you mentioned strength and conditioning has changed dramatically, and I'd love to touch on like what changed where it changed and how it's changed in your mind and your experience, for good, for bad, or for other. But along the way in your experience through pitching, injuries, did you deal with any injuries? Did you guys have a staff in place? Like, just let's start there in terms of what did your staff look like in terms of when you were pitching in the big leagues? Were there trainers? I think the trainers were also doing laundry at that time and doing lots of things. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, the game has really changed. I remember, even getting back to my first stop in Medicine Hat, we had one coach. We didn't have a hitting coach. We didn't have a pitching coach. We had a manager. That was it. And we had a trainer. And then now you look at a big league staff, and now there's like 20 different coaches and trainers and massage therapists. And I'm just like, holy goodness, there's more people on the bus that are non-uniform personnel than the uniform personnel. But, and not that that's a bad thing.
Right.
I just think it's just the way the game has changed. I think with the money that's involved in the game now, when I was in the big leagues, the highest paid player was making $5 million. Now he's making $40 million. So, obviously owners want to make sure that the best resources are available for those type of investments and people. But yeah, I mean, all that stuff has come a long way. I think from my standpoint, coming through the 80s, 90s, and keep moving through each successive decade as more information becomes available and as the science behind all the stuff gets better, I just think that the athletes have such a great advantage, and it would be pretty remiss of them not to take advantage. Back in my day, all we did was run. What are you doing? Nothing. Let's go run. And you ran and throw, and we never touched a weight in the weight room, and our stretches were hilarious. I wouldn't even know if I'd call them stretches. But that's just the way we did things back then. So obviously a lot more detailed, a little better, actually a lot better. It's a lot better for the athlete now.
Yeah, and you touch on some of those stretches, and it's come a long way. Obviously, used to be a throw, throw the elbow behind the head, push it down a little bit, throw the arm across the chest, wrench it across a couple times, give it a couple circles, and fire away, right? And so,
if we did that, there's sometimes we'd be on the ground, we'd be taking naps while the trainers are yelling at us to do leg stretches. We're like snoring away. So.
Just make sure you use your left arm if you're left-handed, right? Just make sure it's ready to go, primed and ready. So much change, obviously, as we move forward and kind of navigate new space in the sports space, and sports science has taken on so much. It's so much of a major role. You talked about the staff obviously increasing in size. Is there any part of you that looks at it now and it's like there's just too much? There might be paralysis by analysis to some degree, or do you feel like I agree, as we move along, not that it matters, but as we move along and gain more, there's advantages, but there's also some disadvantages. I don't know if you've identified any of those or if you feel that way, but how do you feel in terms of all of the things that are now involved?
I just think there's got to be a tremendous amount of caution used with all this information that's out there. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that the coaches and the people that are gathering all this information have to be responsible in how they're going to present the information to the player or to the pitcher. Mm-hmm. For me, I think sometimes what I've noticed is that with all this information and with all, and again, I believe some of it's really, really good. I think, and you hit on it earlier in the cast, is the relationship. I think sometimes we can get so caught up in spewing out the numbers, whether it's talking about on the pitching side, a guy's vertical break or your spin rate, mm-hmm. and you're just spewing numbers out there that you don't forget to say, hey, James, how you doing, man? How's the family? Mm. What's going on, man? I heard your kid's 6 years old now. Great, man. He's in school. Oh, man, that's all. You know what I mean? Like the relationship part can kind of suffer due to the fact that you're trying to cram all this information and get all this information to a player that there's not enough time in the day to develop the relationship that goes along with it. I just think that we got to make sure that we keep the human element inside of the analytic element. But I think there's a great opportunity for a really good marriage between the both.
Yeah, absolutely, and well said and well captured, and from the inside. If you're hearing this, I think this goes a long way in the amateur space, but also filtering its way into the professional space. I think the guys' careers are lasting longer in Major League Baseball. The people that are getting into front offices in certain organizations, at least, are starting to understand that human first. And there is some resentment, right? Maybe from within to all the analytics and looking at my ankle and like that's gonna my ankle range of motion is gonna determine if I make the leap to the big leagues or not, and some other things. And that human first element, really nice to hear from you. You've always been a human first guy, but I think for other people to hear this from inside the sport, from inside the highest level possible, just echoes a lot of the conversation that we've had on this podcast, a lot of what myself and the relationships in the community that are engaged here are talking about, and really looking at maybe even through COVID and the pandemic of allowing this to be a reflective piece where like that human first element, when you strip sport away, there's still a human there. So what are we doing to enhance that? So some nice pieces, and I'd love to go there further with you, but let's jump back to sort of some of the data and the analytics and these kinds of things, just because it's hot on my brain. Had an opportunity to talk with Dr. Andrew Robb, who may or may not have had some overlap with the Blue Jays when you were there. He came in as a sports chiropractor. He does a lot of the stuff with Glenn Fleissig and James Andrews in terms of UCL injuries and looking at the hip and the ankle and the shoulder, and regardless of who and what he works with and for velocity programming, he had a lot of the same response that you had: caution and responsibility, and making sure that you're dealing with people who know and understand where you're at. You have a son now who's in high school, doing a little bit of pitching. You've obviously been around kids, 12 to 16 that are starting to throw at major league distances and throwing year round. We had Jesse Litch on here a few weeks ago, and he was talking about, his educational pieces with the athletes that he's working with, in terms of really validating what they're doing and not doing. To come back around to the velocity programming, and weighted balls became really, really sexy for a couple years. And then there was some hesitancy with them. Obviously, there was a lot of injuries because they weren't being done correctly. Is there a lot of that where you are? Have you had a lot of overlap with those? And any advice with moving either to or from or out of those?
Well, again, I get back to the cautionary tale.
Yeah.
There's this one kid that's 14 years old, for example, that I teach, and he throws probably 83 to 86 right in there. So pretty good velocity for a young kid. And before one lesson, his mom calls me and she goes, "What do you think of plyo balls?" And I'm like, I like plyo balls, where you got two hands on the ball and you're driving it into the wall and you're working on some hip and some hip torque, some explosion, working on some stabilizing with the front leg and some hip turn. I'm like, oh yeah, I like those. And all of a sudden the kid shows up and he dumps the driveline balls. I'm like, those aren't plyo balls, those are driveline. And so my question to him as a 14-year-old kid was, why are you doing the driveline program, or why do you want to do it? He goes, because of velocity. And I'm like, you're 14 years old. And for me, and I don't even pretend to know what you know, James, but I know as a 14-year-old, there's still so much growth that needs to happen. And now I'm going to get this kid. I'm going to sign off on a kid throwing weighted balls against the wall. That's 14, that he still hasn't done growing. His muscles, his ligaments, they're still growing. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I told his mom, I can't sign off on it. If he wants to do it, that's fine. For him, he should really maybe start to get into like a rotator cuff program, maybe some tubing, start to do that, but light weights, reps and light weights, and throwing. I said, when he gets about 16 or 17, then as he starts to physically become more mature, you'll know when it's time to start adding. But right now he's just a kid, and I can't recommend it. And she goes, yeah, well, we just don't know. That being said, I know about the driveline program, but I'm not educated enough on the weighted ball side of it. Mm-hmm. Like I know some of the throwing stuff with the running guns and the quarterback drills that they do as far as a long toss program, I'm a big fan of, right? But that's just going back old school. We did that 30 years ago. Right. Just somebody dressed it up a little bit different, put a different name on it. You know what I mean? Yep. But throwing weighted balls, you hear about some of the success stories. I need to hear about the failures too. I need to hear about the guy that blew up. Yep. I think for transparency, so that when you collect all the data, then you can make an educated decision as to whether you're going to be for it or against it, or individually based. If you're 26 years old and you throw 87 and you're still trying to hang on, and maybe you want to try the drive line. Well, I get that then. You know what I mean? Maybe you go from 86, 87 to 90, 91, then it works. You know, I have questions about whether it's sustainable velocity versus, you know, you get the quick gain, but then 2 months later, you're back to where you were. So is it really worth the risk versus reward kind of deal? There's just a lot of questions I have on that program versus, you know, when I was throwing, and I remember, here's a name for you, Paul Quantrell. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm throwing it out there. So if he's listening, Q, I'm talking about you. You know, we used to talk about what kind of weight of ball we threw. We used to whip tennis balls against the wall because we were working on arm speed.
Right.
Pitchers are always working on weights for strength, but they never do anything for speed. Well, last I checked, that, you know, arm speed is going to equal velocity. You know what I mean? Like, the slower your arm goes, the less faster it's going to come out. So, you know, and that's just, you know, I'm sorry, I don't have a PhD in any of that stuff. I'm just like common sense. If I want to throw the ball hard, I better have a quick moving arm. And so we used to talk about doing that stuff. And but I think for me, I'm just not versed enough in the weighted ball program. I know you were there back when we had that one guy that came through the organization doing the weighted balls, and there's some resistance. Obviously, I just don't know the benefits. I haven't. I'll put it this way: in my experience, I haven't seen enough benefits from those programs to sign off on those programs.
Yeah, no, I think
in my experience.
Yeah. And I think experience speaks volumes, and you don't have to be an expert. You've nailed it on the head in terms of understanding the literature from this side of things, and sustainability goes a long way. Right now, it's really sexy to throw up on Instagram that 14-year-old just hit 90 miles an hour. Is anybody doing a longitudinal follow-up to when that 16-year-old is 21 and what's happened in his arm, shoulder, elbow, hip, etc., so on, and did his career last? And is there a human being beneath that 90 miles an hour, as you've touched on earlier? Some amazing stuff. And again, I'm not pointing fingers, but I always wonder myself about the sustainability, and again, that caution that you've alluded to, I think goes such a long way for amateur coaches who are looking to do the quote unquote, and I don't think anybody's doing this out of you know, malice or malicious intent to get people better faster, but when we rush to get to the velocity before the body is ready, there's going to be a breakdown, and you know it better than anybody else. You got to save your bullets sometimes, and if your bullets are you're used up early, it doesn't turn out too well. And you know, just coming back around to Dr. Rob, who was on a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about weighted ball programs, and he said, listen, the bottom line is that 60, if not 60, I think he said maybe even 70 to 80, you got to go back and listen again, but 70 to 80% of your velocity is generated by your torso, and the rest is through your shoulder, and weighted balls are actually slowing down your torso, which is increasing arm speed, which is increasing drag at the elbow, which is therefore loading the UCL through the pronator, and so on and so forth. And so, and don't quote me directly, but it's amazing to look at how deep the science is now. You know, we can go and look at just, you know, where things are happening along the chain, and how much an incremental increase in the weight of a ball. And you talk tennis balls. We used to play box ball all the time. That's maybe it's Canadian, who knows? You know, box ball, and then find a tennis ball, cut it in half, and throw some pennies inside. You know.
Oh yeah.
And you know, don't throw it at your buddy, but that was some weight at the time. You mentioned Jason Dowse. Obviously, that was some overlap at Lansing. You, myself, Jason, on the staff there, and some amazing rosters of athletes in the minor leagues. And you were in that organization with Blue Jays for 14 years. That's no small feat to stay in one organization through numerous GMs, through numerous managers, moving throughout the ranks of the minor leagues. So for anybody who's on the outside watching this stuff happen, that is no small feat, Vince. And you had your finger on the pulse a lot of the time with a lot of guys who are currently in the big leagues. And I don't want to give away any trade secrets. I don't want to go into Aaron Sanchez's story and his background, but you posted some stuff. You were working with him this off season, just before he's getting ready to go. And I love this kid, and as you do too. And we had some overlap. He had some tough times. He won 15 games 5 years ago, and here he is again, just back on a big league mound, hopefully healthy enough to run through some stuff. How did that come around? That's one of those relationships. That's somebody who knows you. That's somebody who knows you, who knew you, who stayed in touch or reached out when they needed somebody they could trust, right? And so as much or as little as you're willing to get into that one.
Well, let's see. Me and Aaron had developed a really unique relationship from the time we first were acquainted back in, I want to say it would be right around 2010-ish. Mm-hmm. I was in Auburn. He came up to Auburn the end of season one year. And then obviously when we had them all with all of us in 2012 in Lansing. And again, it was just a relationship, like back to my point, developed a relationship first. And it was a relationship that was developed over time. And so when Toronto let me go at the end of the 2019 season, I remember talking with Aaron, and he was telling me he was going in for surgery on his shoulder. I forget the injury, but he explained it to me, and I'm like, well, I never heard of that one before, but I guess the kid in the Dodgers went through the uritis. He went through the same type of injury. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, well, if I don't hook on with anybody, just if you need me, I'll be here. I'm available for you. And so that's how that kind of went. And then when he was ready to start his throwing program, away we went. And the thing was, the beauty of it was, James, is that he wasn't with anybody. So he didn't have to follow any direction from anybody. I wasn't with anybody, so I didn't have to answer to anybody. But the fact that Aaron trusted what I was saying to him, and we used a lot of people in a lot of different venues to help us with this. So it wasn't like I was just, hey, this is Vince Horsman saying do this. I talked to pitching coordinators. I talked to trainers. I talked to strength guys. Aaron did his due diligence on his end with his rehab people to making sure that what we were doing was going to put Aaron in the best possible place to be from a physical standpoint or from a functional movement standpoint, for whatever it was. And it just kind of developed over the year that we worked together. And then he went down and did his thing and got the contract. So it was really unique perspective on my part to just spend that much time with a kid and develop him from the very first time he picks up a ball, having to change his whole arm slot, have to change the way his body, his whole functional movement patterns all had to change. Mm-hmm. And to help him go through that. It was really kind of cool. I wish he did it. I wish I would have kind of booked it and then see how from February of 2020 to where he's at now would have been pretty cool to look back at, but very enjoyable.
Yeah, no, amazing. And those relationships, again, they make a difference, whether at the time to keep people not buying in, but people united in terms of where it was going. And everything you just said was centered around the athlete. And I think that's one piece that gets left out. And the human being, he has to have trust. You have to have trust. It's that old adage of like, it takes a village, well, it takes a village to raise a pitcher to the big leagues as well. And funny enough, him and Disco. So DeSclafani have Anthony DeSclafani were in Lansing together back in those years, and they've now reconnected and they're in San Francisco together, and Disco picked up a win tonight. I was just pulling up the box score, 8 strikeouts over 6 and no earned runs. Sanchi goes tomorrow night, and it's amazing to see these guys continue on, and I'm sure it lights you up as well, and such a major part of things is the pitching coach. And you went through Major League Baseball with just one coach, no pitching coach, through Medicine Hat and some of your minor league stops, with nobody but one manager. And then we talk about the abundance of staff now. And it takes a lot to navigate the personalities, to understand who the human is, and to really continue that as a continuity piece to somebody's career and their longevity. If we can shift gears a little bit as a pitching coach, working with a manager or working with a hitting coach, working with a field coordinator, the GM, the assistant GM, let's push those to the side for a second and make this sort of relevant to the performance space, or a little bit more relevant to the performance space. What are some of the things that you've encountered with strength coaches, massage therapists, whoever from the performance staff, athletic trainers, athletic therapists, that either have worked, haven't worked, personal stories, whatever you're willing to give on that. I always find it incredibly educational to share these pieces from the pitching coach, from your role, what matters when it comes to communication or whatever. What are the things that stand out characteristic wise for performance personnel to either stay in the game or to be trusted for using your language?
Well, I think initially it's to develop in the relationships, like when you were the trainer for Lansing and I was the pitching coach, or where JD was the strength and conditioning coach, to making sure that we were all on the same page and that we all had the kids' interests first. And then I think it's the personality of us as coaches. I mean, you personally know me. If you can't get along with me, then you ain't gonna get along with anybody. You know what I mean? Like, I'm about as easygoing as a person can be. And I think that's important because, some of the managers are high strung and they're worried about wins and losses, and we're worried about some of the other stuff. So what I try to do is just to make sure that whatever the development staff is for that current season is just to get to know them a little bit, so they get to know me a little bit, and just that we're on the same page. I know sometimes there might be some disagreements or some difference of opinions, but as long as that we're always putting the kid first and not letting our personalities get in the way, I think the relationships will always work well. And I think the constant communication, if you come to me and said, hey, Aaron's, got a little quad strain, but I don't think it's serious, we're just going to back him off of running and we're just going to keep him on the exercise bike. That's all it takes. It's a 3-minute conversation to keep me in the loop. And it's the same when I'm out there watching the kid throw and I go, hey, remember Marcus Walden? I say, hey, Marcus, I'm watching the throw. It doesn't look right. Why don't you come over and take a look? Maybe, I'm going to get in his ear a little bit, see how he's feeling. I know he's been used a lot the last week and a half, and maybe he just gets some fatigue in there. So maybe we'll get him in there to see you, but it just doesn't look right. So we're always communicating from what we see, what we feel, and then maybe a direction in which we're going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, a sense of humor and maybe being Canadian kind of helps as well. So we'll just throw that one out there. Marcus Walden, what a guy.
How about that name from the past?
Yeah, wow. Threw that one up and I kept seeing him pop up on different rosters, and amazing. Some of these guys still going and all these things. You touch on so many amazing things that I feel like we could go down any one of those rabbit holes, but there's so many messages here for people who are in the field and trying to understand that the sexiest tricks or stretches or movement screens or whatever aren't what keep you there. It is truly the relationships. There's a lot of lifers in baseball that I'm still in touch with after leaving baseball and still keeping my finger on the pulse. Who are some of the mentors in your career that you're still in touch with? Some long-term, long-standing, relationships along the way. I know being in the Blue Jays organization, you saw and met, if not had, a coffee or some other beverage of choice with throughout the years. But who are some of the guys that really, you hold in high regard? And I know you're going to leave a bunch out because there's a ton of them, but the top couple that come to mind.
Well, unfortunately, they're no longer with us. But initially, the Bobby Maddox and the Mel Queens of the world. Mm-hmm. When and then you can attest to this, when they start talking about the Bobby Maddox stories, there's not too many of us that are around that were actually like part of those stories. Like, yeah, I remember those stories because I lived it. Big influence as far as work ethic and dedication to helping kids out. Mel Queen, just the way he communicated with you. He never talked at you. He talked to you. And then as I progressed through my coaching life, and especially with the Blue Jay system, is Dane Johnson, who was our pitching coordinator back then, where he valued your opinion. It didn't necessarily mean that you were going to get your way, but he was like, make an argument and try to persuade me why you feel strongly about doing something. And then, and then we'll see if that's the right direction we need to go. But the fact that he was always open-minded to hearing what his coaches had to say versus, no, we're just going to do it this way. And it was like a closed door. And I thought to be in that position, but to still trust and value the opinion of the people that are, for lack of a better term, just underneath you, it makes everybody feel like they're involved in the whole process. And I think when you feel like you're involved in a whole process, there's some self-worth there. And I think that's what helps drive the engine. So,
beautiful. Yeah, no, some beautiful shares. And again, they trickle into everyday life, moving out of baseball and still having an opportunity to influence others. And this conversation, strip away the title. These are lessons you've learned from being in an industry, from working at the highest level, and these translate. These run parallel in teaching, in as a student. All of these things as you go. And I didn't get to meet Bobby Maddock, but certainly Mel Queen was around when we were there, and to hear the Mel Queen stories, but then also see Mel Queen on the field. What a beautiful man, and the influence he had with you. And I always remember, Q, when Paul Quantrill was around a little bit, and Pat Henkin talking about, Mel and how much of an influence he had in terms of just being a pillar of sort of stability, but also knowledge, and all of those things you touched on. And Dane, obviously a giant man, a big, tall guy, pitched in the big leagues, and just gentle as could be when it came to listening to your opinion and hearing those things. So we'll transition a little bit with that one. Mechanics, biomechanics, all kinds of things. No, you don't have a PhD. No, you didn't study quote unquote biomechanics, but you understand pitching mechanics better than anybody else. Those dialogues, let's just go there for some of the students and some of the people who are either in or want to get in or have an interest in what actually goes on. Me as the therapist, the trainer with the team, you as the pitching coach, I'm not going to come to you and say he needs to change his mechanics. So where does that sort of conversation lie when it comes to what's my role, what's your role as a pitching coach? How do we do this together in the best interest of the pitcher?
Well, I think when we go into it, it's like, okay, what's going to be the best version of this kid? And that's like, okay, James, what's going to be the best version of this kid as far as his rotator cuff, his manuals, his whatever he needs to do with you? What type of program does he need to do with you? And then we go to the strength and conditioning guy. What's the best version of this guy do you feel? He needs to do this, he needs to do that. Or what areas of weakness does he have that he needs to improve on? And for me, then it's just looking at the overall package. I can't do my job really well if you're not doing your part as the athletic trainer, and the fitness coach isn't doing his job. Whereas we're trying to build this best version of this kid, but it takes, like you said, abilities to raise a child. It takes all of us to be a part of this, so that we can, if there's physical limitations, hopefully we can get around those and improve those. Because I might want to try something with him, but it's not that he can't do it. He's physically unable to do it. So how can we get him physically able to do it? Is it spending some more time with you? Is it spending some more time with the strength and conditioning coach? Whatever it is, but we're always collaborating so that we can figure out what's going to be the best version of that kid. And then from there, it's his video work and studying. And the one caveat to all that for me, though, is there's the perfect delivery. He does this right, he does that right, and then you can break it down analytically, right? His shin is at 11-degree angle from the ground, and I even, like, my eyeballs float with it sometimes. I'm like, man, you kidding me? That's just way too much for the pitcher. I'm like, what's he going to look like? I want the best athlete on the mound that I can get, and we'll get his body movement patterns as close to being as good as we can to perfect, as long as that's the way his body wants to move. For me, changes are necessitated by super inconsistencies or the risk versus reward for an injury standpoint. Like, this guy cannot throw like that because he's going to blow out. And I'll use Aaron Sanchez as an example, because the way he was throwing prior to his injury, and then once he hit his injury, he wasn't going to be able to sustain that type of delivery without re-injuring himself, in my opinion. Right. So that's why we had to get him more, or when we collaborated, was talking about getting him in a more athletic position, a better posture, using his legs better versus just kind of being, because he had that strong arm, just trying to get him more athletic and dynamic on the mound with just a better movement pattern. And so those are the things that I think between all of us that are involved, we collaborate, and then we just get to work. But I still don't want to take the human element out of it, because some guys it doesn't look right, but it just works for them. And I think you can't ever forget that too, because if you try to change the guy too much and all of a sudden he forgets who he is or loses his personality, and then he doesn't have any success, the blame is going to be on the coach, not on the player. Right. And so you're always taking into account for how that kid feels. Hey, can you try this? And if it doesn't work, we can always try something else. But also making sure that the player is involved in this whole aspect. So me, you, strength guy, and the player, we're all collaborating, seeing how we can make the best version of this guy.
Yeah, and a great inside look at how things work in a best case scenario, but in the real world as well. No cookie cutter approach to mechanics, no cookie cutter approach to the human being. It brings up so many just vivid memories of going back through certain left-handed pitchers, certain right-handed pitchers, and the conversations we had to have in order to um, to elicit change or to rein them in, so to speak. In those early years in the minor leagues for the guys who are now in the big leagues, they may not look back at them, but those are critical in terms of their learning curve, in terms of their work ethic, in terms of transitioning either out of high school or college. And these are things that also get considered, and that is a human first approach, really, when it comes down to understanding. He's only 17, coming from, whatever his background is. This is a 21-year-old coming through, who's been living on his own for 4 years, whatever the case might be. I go back to Lansing, and I think about this big giant right-hander that basically we had to get on either side of him because he was an ox, and just sort of hold him back from constantly going through the wall. And even then, still doing more than what was required. And that's turned into obviously a nice career in a certain metropolitan city in the U.S. there. But and then the left-hander who you needed to light a fire under his ass to sort of get him to do some work, even though he was 96 from the left side and looked really great and just couldn't get over the hump, but that hump might have been something else. So some really great shares from inside. And I think, again, man, the more you can deliver that message to some of the amateur coaches and the amateur space in terms of the human first, instead of the mechanics or having everybody look the same or doing the same program, I just, again, it's a reality that should be happening, but I don't think it is. I don't think there's a ton of great information filtering its way down to the amateur space. So maybe we collaborate in the future on doing some more work in that space. One of my passion projects is to have a little bit more of a voice in those spaces, to understand that, like, quarterback drills and throwing on the run, and like, these are the things that matter. This is how we teach movement literacy, and this is how we teach athleticism. And you don't have to throw to throw better. You don't have to just be on repeat all the time. And I'm hearing this from you and experts in the field. Amazing stuff. So you're in Florida. Things are going well. You now have a professional baseball team down there your way, playing in Dunedin on the rainy nights and the long-awaited rain delays and 15-1 victories for the Blue Jays and things like that. Baseball season is upon us. What are you doing with your time these days? How often? How many kids? You're working primarily with high school kids, college kids?
No, my age group ranges from 8 to 16. It's a blast. I teach about 30 kids a week. Kind of helps just offset some of the income. And, that's why I'm semi-retired. I can't retire yet. And I'm trying to get to Italy. I agreed to go over to Italy to work with the national program over there. But due to COVID, I was supposed to leave already, but right now everything's got to push back till the middle of May. So I'm hoping to be able to get over there till at the middle of May. I'm staying over there till October 15th, roughly.
Wow. Okay.
I'm going to basically be involved in their whole developmental system. In other words, from Little League all the way through their senior national program.
Beautiful.
I'm going over there to help with the coaches over there, and to impart some of my knowledge on them. And then develop a strategy as far as, how to develop kids at different levels and like have a feeder system into their national program. So I'm really excited about that. It's a unique opportunity. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get back into the pro game. I'm probably just getting too old now because my age group, there's a lot of assumptions made, even though not all of them are accurate. But until I get another opportunity in the pro game, I'm glad something like this came up. And if I never get back into the program, it's okay. I'm thinking about going back home and maybe doing some stuff back in Nova Scotia from a technical aspect and teaching pitching, or I can just keep doing what I'm doing down here. But I'll cross that bridge when I get there. I enjoy watching my son play basketball, and he's doing some baseball now. Pitched an inning the other day, and he struck out 2 and gave up a hit. And he looks good for the 6'6" giraffe out there on the mound. And when the last time you saw him, he was probably about 5'1", with Justin Bieber hair.
If that, yeah. That's right.
So Yeah, and I got 2 grandkids, so they keep me busy. And just getting old and salty now, but still staying in the game, still trying to be a good mentor to kids. I enjoy the private lessons. As I say, it's more of a mentorship than it is the actual X's and O's of pitching. But a lot of the kids, they're getting, like you talk about the information, they're getting a lot of bad information of how they should develop and their movements. And I got a 10-year-old that wants to learn how to throw a slider, and I'm telling his parents no. And then I got a 13-year-old that pitched back-to-back nights. One day he threw 40 pitches, the next day he threw 2 more innings and another 35. So your son pitched 5 innings, threw 75 pitches in 2 days. Mm-hmm. And the lady was like, yeah. And I'm like, I've never asked a professional to do that. So why would you ask a 13-year-old to do that? Yep. You know what I mean? Like the cautionary tales, man, about arm development. And I'm like, and then when we did our lesson, his arm was sore. And I'm like, well, I know why his arm was sore. You don't do that. There's things that you don't do. And unfortunately with YouTube is, you get all these amateur guys going on YouTube and watching somebody do it on YouTube. And then it's like, oh, okay, I got that. We'll just do that instead of really knowing how it's supposed to work versus the visual. Yeah. And it's a shame. So, but with people like you educating people and maybe with me educating the parents, the moms and dads to like, don't let your kid do that kind of thing. And then letting the kids have fun because, baseball, once they get to a certain level, there's really no place to go. If you don't make your high school team, that's about it. And unfortunately, there's just some kids that just, stop playing baseball. So I try to teach kids to love the game, have fun doing it. We'll work on the X's and O's as we go along. But to have fun, you're gonna get better faster when you're having fun doing what you're doing. So.
Yeah. Absolutely, man, and what a great opportunity for those kids to be working with somebody with the CV, the resume behind it, and all the salt. The salt goes a long way. So I just want to go just a little bit further with that one. The opportunity.
The salt. You want to go further with the salt?
Okay. Well, always with the salt. I don't know if they use salt. I don't know if they use salt in Italy, but 6 months in Italy with the national program. You're Canadian. You're living in the U.S. How does Italy fit in?
It was just weird the way it all came about, but they reached out and asked if I'd be interested. And they say my social calendar was a little empty. So I'm like, yeah. But again, COVID, obviously COVID's impacting you guys up there. It's impacting everybody around the world. So it's just waiting to be able to get over there. Mm-hmm. But it was a unique situation that presented itself, and it's something that intrigued me to be involved with the national program and the development of its pitchers. That'd be pretty cool. And I'm just curious to see where it might go. Maybe it's something that might lead to not just 1 year over there, but maybe several years over there. I still want to stay in the game and again, be impactful and give back. And whether it's in Italy, Canada, or over here, it doesn't really matter. As long as I'm doing what I like to do.
Yeah. Amazing. They're lucky to have you. What an amazing opportunity for everybody involved and for you, whether or not that pro game happens, who knows, it's an opportunity, go figure it out. 6 months in Italy, all things being equal and COVID, remaining at bay and everything working out. You may turn into the international pitching guru that everybody needs in their corner. So some beautiful stuff. Amazing. So I'll let you go here in a couple minutes. We won't keep you much longer. If anybody has anything that's here live, please type it in the chat box. I'll get it over to Vince. If there are any questions, this is session 68 of First Star Let's Chat with Vince Horsman, former big league pitcher, Canadian, in the Nova Scotia Sports Hall of Fame. This has been fantastic. Been so much to catch up on still, and always great to see and to hear from you and your perspective, and really just sharing your time, sharing your experiences. It goes such a long way beyond even baseball. It filters into this space. It filters into parenthood. It filters into our students that are listening. And I think, again, like even just to highlight, big league pitching career ends. transition to pitching coach career ends. Now you're influencing amateurs at this is where it matters. You're building foundational knowledge, foundational understanding, lifelong work ethic, care for the body, understanding the holistic kind of take on things. And then an opportunity comes up for you in another country and you say yes, because when an opportunity like that comes up, who knows what it could turn into. So some really brilliant things if I sort of capture it in summary. We'll leave this one for now. This has been amazing. I'll let you wrap this one up with any final thoughts. Again, session 68, Vince Horsman, First Star Let's Chat, brought to you by Mobility Tape, Epic, Benchmark Athletics, and in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapy Association. We go again Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern live. That's part 3 of 3 in our educational series, Women in Sports. That's a panel discussion. Don't miss that one, either live or by podcast. And then again, same bat time, same bat channel next Sunday, session 69 with Jasmine Baird. She's a member of the National Slopestyle Big Air snowboard team. Vince, back to you, man. This has been phenomenal. I miss sitting on the bench and watching your goatee go a little bit grayer, and also the chats. I told the story of walking out to the mound with one big Utah left-hander after taking a ball off the chops the other day, and the conversation we had on the mound in Lansing. Anyway, we'll save that for another day. But not to minimize this, your time is valuable, your lessons provided, and all the things that you're doing. Really appreciate it. I'll let you wrap this one up.
No, thanks, James, for having me. Again, I always like sharing the knowledge that I've accrued over the 36 years that I was in pro baseball, and anything to help. As I say, part of giving back. If something that I said tonight helps just one person, then the 45 minutes or however long we were talking is worth it. So, as we continue to develop our coaching aspects or our coaching skill set and understanding, what's involved in really becoming that good coach that the players want you and request you and enjoy being with you, and you're mentoring them not only in their sport, but in life. And when they look back and they remember you. When I got fired from the Blue Jays, I had like 40 kids reach out and call me, and just to say how impactful I was on their life. Forget about being fired. That was I couldn't have asked for a better scenario than to have those kids reach out and just to say what they said. And so, I guess in closing, without getting too long-winded, as you know, I like to talk. The Maritimer that likes to talk. Just listen to the kids and be there for them and support them in what they're trying to do and help them wherever you can.
Beautiful.
That's my message.
Humans for humans, man. A lot of good messages in here, and good Canadian guy doing the things. We'll get you some ketchup chips. We'll do some things in the future.
Please. And a coffee crisp. Mix in a coffee crisp.
There we go. Mix in one of those as well. So for everybody joining live, for everybody picking up the podcast, thank you so much. This is where it starts. This is where it ends. It's about community. It's about connection. It's about relationships. And it's about sharing your expertise. Vince Horsman, thank you so much. I wish you good night. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com. CONSULT@firststartherapy.com. On Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.